Hello, my name's Andy Connell and you're watching a screencast on ethics, which forms part of the Business Systems Analysis course. We start off by considering what ethics are about. Ethics looks at correct behaviour, how it is right to behave. The behaviour might be exhibited by an individual, but it's more likely that the ethical behaviour is defined by some kind of group, perhaps a religious group, perhaps a tribe, perhaps a nation state. In the modern world, it's likely that ethical behaviour might well be guarded by the profession of which you are a member. Ethics is about morality. It's about how we deal with other people. What is the correct and reasonable way in which power is exercised? We've been trying to work this one out since the birth of civilization. We have stories like the Epic of Gilgamesh, we have the Greek tragedy plays, all of which sought to explore morality and correct behaviour. But this exploration occurred inside an individual society. With the World Wide Web, which is only just over 20 years old, suddenly all these societies are being connected. They are no longer standalone. And this creates problems, because what is acceptable in one society might be completely unacceptable in another, and therefore resolutions have to be found. If we take a very common moral issue, the moral issue of poverty, poor people are powerless. In straight economic terms, they always pay more. For instance, if you're a poor person in a poor country and you want to wash your hair, you will buy your shampoo in an individual sachet, not a big bottle. Individual sachets are the most expensive way of buying hair shampoo. If you want to buy time on your mobile telephone, you will buy a top-up card. That's the most expensive way of buying time on a telephone. You won't have a contract. You can't afford it. Poor have always been powerless, always been paying more. Take that image of powerlessness and poverty and then extend it into the idea of information poverty. If you're not plugged into information, you are, to a degree, powerless. You become vulnerable, you can be exploited, can't take advantage of lower prices, you're always getting the top dollar price. Social justice can extend into any number of fields. Freedom of speech has become, relatively recently, a major issue. We'll touch on people like WikiLeaks and Edward Snowden later on. I want to think about how people make money, how people participate in an economy. It's generally accepted you go to work, you make money in exchange for your time, and then you spend that money buying goods and services provided by other people, and thus the money goes round, the money moves. But computers make things on production lines. And if computers are making things on production lines, what's the role of the human being? This is the story of two guys, Henry Ford and the head of the Auto Workers Union, walking down a production line, a modern production line. Henry Ford turns to the union guy and says, "So, how are you going to get all these robots to pay your union fees?" To which the union guy responds, "How are you going to get all these robots to buy your cars?" The whole underpinning capitalist society is challenged by the introduction of modern computer control systems. Privacy, another major moral issue. We recognize in things like the Human Rights Act and Article 8 of the UN Convention on Human Rights that we have a right to a private life. And yet modern society, we are tracked continuously. They say there are 14 people for every CCTV camera in the UK. Our habits are tracked through our use of ATM machines, our purchases on supermarkets, our purchases online. George Orwell's 1984 is perhaps not so far away. Edward Snowden has shown us that modern Western intelligence agencies, most notably the NSA and our own GCHQ at Cheltenham, have been able to access for a number of years just about any piece of traffic which goes across the internet. This doesn't only include emails, but also financial transactions, so-called encrypted data. There are backdoors in data encryption systems. There is widespread snooping. You generally accept that anything that you send down the internet can be read at some point by somebody. There is a tendency recognised in the comedy programme Little Britain, where computer says no. We live in a society where people think computers speak the truth, and yet a lot of what a computer says is the result of an algorithm, a program, which has calculated an answer depending on various parameters and rules. Artificial intelligence being the most modern manifestation of this. It's very hard to unpick a decision made by an AI unit and work out why they've come to the decision to which they've reached. So we are giving power away to computer systems we do not understand. They are making decisions. Decision is flashed up on a screen, and we are accepting it as a fact. Is it a fact? So, who are the players in the ethical game? Well, we have, obviously, the law. But laws are set at national boundaries. We have international treaties and conventions. There are laws which are pan-European, in as much as they exist within the bounds of the European Union, for instance. We've got things like the North American Trade Agreement, which are transnational. There are professional bodies such as the British Computer Society or the Institute of Electronic and Electrical Engineers who will produce their own codes of conduct, perhaps the most famous of which would be the Hippocratic Oath taken by doctors, a statement of what constitutes ethical behaviour for a medical professional. Problems. There's nothing intrinsically wrong with gambling, but we've seen an explosion of gambling websites and something of a moral backlash, perhaps not in this country but certainly in the USA, against such sites. We have a situation where monopolies constantly grow. The internet and the power wielded by a computer has the effect of concentrating wealth and money. If you look at the influence that organizations like Google now wield, in terms of the fact that most people will search with Google, are we putting these organizations in a position where they can never fail? I've mentioned profiling, this idea of the fact that your cards, whether it be in an ATM, whether it be at an EPOS till, are constantly being monitored for what you're buying, what you're taking out of your bank. You are being constantly monitored. Surveillance cameras now can identify individuals by the way they walk, their gait. You don't need a face anymore. You can be tracked down a street, your movements and your actions can be constantly monitored. And they're doing this on a commercial basis for the reasons of profiling, so you can be classified. There's another one mentioned here, spam. Marketing companies seem to think it's their God-given right to constantly bombard us with their special offers, as if somehow if we didn't receive these special offers we'd be missing out on something. Can we opt out of this? And now on to a topic which will become of increasing importance. I've mentioned the production line and the auto plant with the robots building cars. But robots are coming very, very quickly down the line. The military are massive users of robots, which raises all sorts of questions. Drone strikes in Afghanistan just being the tip of the iceberg, whereby people are being killed by unmanned robots. At the moment, their decisions are made, kill decisions are made by human beings, but it's not a big leap to have an autonomous kill decision made by a robot, which has hosts of all kinds of sci-fi horror movies. As the populations age, robotics for old people are increasingly coming on the scene. Robots, of course, are not self-aware. They are programmed with inside very strict parameters. And it's worth remembering Isaac Asimov's 3 Laws of Robotics, penned in 1942, a lifetime ago, in the middle of World War II. So, where does that leave us? The technology is galloping ahead of people's ability to understand it, to understand its potential, its reach, its power. It would seem unstoppable at the moment. National governments and legislators struggle in the wake of this technological charge to come up with ethically correct laws which can contain the situation, but they often wind up closing the gate after the horse has bolted. Ethics is a field in desperate need of attention. People have got to focus on the impact that true global communications are going to have on the way that people treat each other, if only to make sure that we don't all descend to the lowest common denominator. Well, that concludes my short and rather depressing lecture on ethics. Thank you very much for watching.